All right, it's your boy Fanon. Welcome back to the channel. Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford, we're going to talk about it again. Terence Crawford takes another big old dump on the fight, killing any expectation of seeing one of the best fights that can possibly happen in boxing. It's so upsetting to me. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. This is one of the most depressing conversations that I can have about the sport of boxing because it is about probably the best fight that can be made in boxing. Yeah, I think it's about the best fight that can be made in boxing. I can't think of too many fights that are better than this, and that is the Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. fight, or Errol Spence Jr. versus Terence Crawford at welterweight. As I look at the welterweight division, I'm telling you, we are one fight away from being able to see it. And that one fight is Shawn Porter and Terence Crawford, which is coming up on November 20th. After that fight is over, as long as Errol Spence Jr. doesn't take a tune-up or isn't forced into some mandatory situation, that fight is right there to be made, provided that Terence Crawford takes the fight. Terence Crawford was interviewed by Brian Custer, and the article just went up today on Boxing Scene, where he says that that fight is not going to happen. And his rationale is that he had been trying for years and years and years to get the fight with Errol Spence Jr., but that it hasn't happened, and he is not going to be going through the same stuff that he went through with Manny Pacquiao. Specifically, he says that we are in the year 2021. I was working on getting a fight with Manny Pacquiao since 2015. I never got it. Some of these fights just aren't going to happen, and this is a fight that is not going to happen. That fight, that comparison from Terence Crawford is apples and oranges. First and foremost, Manny Pacquiao, the reason that, according to Bob Arum, the reason that the Manny Pacquiao versus Terence Crawford fight did not happen earlier was that Bob Arum, did not want to make that fight, and Top Rank stopped that fight from taking place. According to Bob Arum, Manny Pacquiao wanted to fight, Terence Crawford wanted to fight. I can't remember what fight Terence Crawford was promised that Manny Pacquiao fight. It was pretty early on, I think it might even been when he was still at lightweight. If it wasn't the Thomas Delorme fight, it was one of those fights where Terence Crawford was promised the fight. And it was actually said that because in the introduction to the fight, it was mentioned that if Terence Crawford beats this guy, I think it was Thomas Delorme, then he's in line next for the Manny Pacquiao fight. Now, that particular fight, was not going to happen. If anybody had been paying attention to how Bob Arum did business and the likelihood that Manny Pacquiao was going to lose that fight to Terence Crawford, knew that fight wasn't going to happen from a matchmaking standpoint. Similar to the way that when you look right now down at 130 pounds, you can see Shakur Stevenson with the WBO belt, and you can see Oscar Valdez with the WBC belt, both top-ranked fighters. But I promise you, Bob Arum is not going to want to make that fight between the two of them because Oscar Valdez is somebody that he hopes he can make a good amount of money on, and he knows the outcome of that fight. Shakur Stevenson is going to mop Oscar Valdez. Oscar Valdez knows the outcome of that fight. I've listened to an interview with him where he said that he thought that the fight with with somebody would be a more entertaining, with Navrati moving up from 126, the WBO 126-pound champion, would be a more entertaining fight, right? So just the way that plays out, if you pay attention to boxing long enough, you know that pretty much nobody other than Shakur Stevenson's camp is going to want to make that fight happen. I think that was the scenario with Terence Crawford and Manny Pacquiao, but right now that's not what the scenario is. You have a guy in Errol Spence Jr. who is going to fight somebody for a championship, and that's what he wants to do. He's been very, very clear about saying that he wants strap season, he wants the belts. Now, I know that he was trying to fight Yordenis Ugas and Manny Pacquiao. Or first, it started with Yordenis Ugas, then Manny Pacquiao moved in and he was going to fight Manny Pacquiao, but he got the eye injury, so Yordenis Ugas wound up beating Manny Pacquiao. So now he wants to fight Yordenis. He being Errol Spence Jr. wants to fight Yordenis Ugas, but that fight can't happen because of what's going on with the WBC. Going on with the WBA, excuse me, and the WBA saying that they want to consolidate their belts, that being their WBC Super Championship and their WBA Regular Championship. They're having some pressure put on them by the Association of Boxing Commissions to shrink the number of belts that they have. So they think for their organization that shrinking of the number of WBA belts should be prioritized over unifications between different sanctioning bodies. So Errol Spence Jr. finds himself in a position right now of probably not being able to fight for that WBA super belt next, because even if Yordenis Ugas drops the belt, then other guys in the tournament are going to be fighting for that belt. So it's just not a fight where he can get the belt. So if Errol Spence Jr. is planning on coming back, like you said, in the first part of 2021, whether that be, the March, April, May timeframe or what have you, and if he wants to fight for one of the belts, then the belt that's going to be out there is the WBO belt, and the winner of that, the guy that's going to hold that belt, is either going to be Terence Crawford or Shawn Porter. So the fight is right there. It's not a situation like Manny Pacquiao where Manny Pacquiao, and Bob, you got a promoter standing in between the two. Also, according to Bob Arum, Terence Crawford is going to be free to fight whoever he wants to fight, and Bob Arum and Top Rank are only interested in doing a fight-by-fight basis with Terence Crawford. So the likelihood of him finding Terence Crawford finding a more lucrative fight for himself than Errol Spence Jr., I think is it's pretty much slim and none, man. So the way that the politics are working out for it, and I know we always talking about politics, and that's very, very real when you got all kind of different people involved in it. But this is not a couple years ago where Terence Crawford had 3 fights left on his top rank. His top rank contract, and where there was this wall between Top Rank and the PBC, because as you see, those guys are already fighting guys that are in the PBC. The next fight for Terence Crawford is against a PBC fighter, right? So now that wall between Top Rank and PBC has come down. So it's just, for me, and I'm not blasting on Terence Crawford. What I'm hoping Terence Crawford is doing is that he's just, playing hard to get, right? Like, I'm just, I'm going to say I'm past the fight so that Errol Spence Jr., gives him the money that, that he deserves or that he thinks he deserves for the fight, and he can make more money in the fight. That's what I'm hoping that he's doing by saying, oh, I'm past it, I don't want the fight, just kind of, just playing it off. But if he's being truthful, then, I don't know what kind of excuse you can really make for that. If you have a guy just saying that, I don't want to be led around, I don't believe this fight is ever going to happen, so I don't want the fight. What's wrong with continuing to say that you want the fight, as long as you're going to get fair money on the fight? Because after you beat, if he beats, and I do think that's an if, even though I do favor Shawn Porter, if he beats Shawn Porter, I mean, really, who else is there for him to fight at welterweight other than Errol Spence Jr.? He can't get a shot with Yordenis Ugas either. That WBA belt is tied up. And so then he's going to be looking forward to getting a voluntary, and he's going to be trying to get a voluntary when he's not under contract by Top Rank. So, all in all, man, I think that it looks like that fight is ripe to be made. And it's a shame that if that's what Terence Crawford's attitude really is, and he's not, again, playing hard to get, it's just unfortunate, man. And it makes you wonder. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. Please, in the comment section, let me know what you think in the comment section. Hit the like button, all that good stuff. Share the video. It would be greatly appreciated. And with that, I'm out. Peace.